Hello, I'm back from Sweden. I can tell you that I was there now because my ability to elude the authorities does not depend on me being in Sweden anymore. I managed to conduct some red carpet interviews there. It was a good time. I hope you've been well. I've obviously been in Narnia for a little bit. It's been an incredibly busy time for me, which is unfortunate because normally I'm doing nothing. And you like it, I would assume, when I'm doing nothing because then I'm able to do this. And guess what? I'm back. And a lot of things have happened while I've been on this latest, just traipsing across wherever the hell I was going. The one I've circled and underlined that I wanted to talk about the most, which is unfair because there's a lot of things I want to talk about the most, is the Mo Salah situation because this is unusual. It's unusual for a couple of reasons, but the biggest one for me is that I didn't know Mo Salah had it in him. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. There are just certain types of players that have it in them and certain that don't. Right? It's the difference between a Bruno Fernandes and a Paul Pogba. See, Paul Pogba has it in him. When he's there and it's not going well, he can find a way to force a move. Where somebody like Bruno Fernandes, he just doesn't, that's just not really who he is. Even if he's down in the mud with Manchester United, when he clearly could be playing at a higher level, he's not making noise. Right? You just think about it. There's certain players like that. They just don't really make noise. It's not a problem. They're going to keep their head down. They're going to do what they're supposed to do. If they leave, it's going to be very amenable. Nobody's feelings are going to be hurt. They're non-confrontational. I mean, I'm sure Bruno Fernandes is a decently confrontational person, as a captain, a leader of the team, right? But yeah, I figured Mo Salah was in that vein. That sure, he's probably got his opinions, his strong opinions. He's probably got a huge ego, this and that. I mean, he's basically the king of Egypt, right? If you remember, probably my favorite Mo Salah story in the last Egyptian election, over 1 million people wrote in Mo Salah's name. 1 million, right? Like I get a few thousand, kids thought it was funny. 1 million, over 1 million people wrote in Mo Salah's name. He wasn't running. They had to cross out the names and write his name in. Over 1 million, right? So yeah, I'm sure he's got a pretty decent ego. It'd be impossible not to have that when you're from a country of over 100 million and you're basically the guy, right? I mean, we're dealing with the LeBron James of soccer as far as Egypt is concerned, to borrow a meme. I never expected that to spill over. And as far as I know, in his career, which has involved multiple, kind of tumultuous exits, not of his making, Chelsea, whatever, I just hadn't seen this from him before. So when after this match right here against Leeds, he doesn't play. It's 3-3. It's a wild shootout. Second match in 2 that he doesn't play, right? He played 45 minutes in the match before that. Basically, he's played 45 minutes in the last 3 matches combined. Liverpool is, of course, in the throes of losing all of these matches. They lost 3-0 to Nottingham. They lost 4-1 to PSV. They lost to Manchester City, all while Mo Salah played a full 90 minutes and got no goal contributions whatsoever. He pulls up after the game and gives an interview. And the interview is it's like 2 minutes or something. And one of the best quotes I saw about this interview was, you could tell he really wanted to talk to somebody because he gave this interview to like a Norwegian reporter. This was not, the BBC standing there with the post-match mic in your face stuff. This was a gaggle of people with phones that, the types of people that are normally standing there like, a quick word, Mo, a quick word, right at the end of the tunnel. And they normally never get a quick word. He was on the warpath to choose to do this interview. He was not forced to speak and then said something he didn't want to say. He wanted to say it. And basically, the entire interview was, I think they're throwing me under the bus, trying to blame me for the fact that we're performing well. I don't think the coaches communicated well with me. I do not like this. I am not happy. I want to play. That was basically it. And it is rare that you get a player that will so directly say that, let alone a player like Mo Salah, who's not normally in the limelight for this type of stuff, right? I mean, even when you have players like Vinny or Mbappe or whatever, they'll usually just have their PR teams leak stuff, and you'll start seeing articles like, Vinny's frustrated with Xabi Alonso's management style. He doesn't sit in a press conference and go, yeah, he's pissing me the fuck off. That's basically what Mo Salah does right here. He goes, I don't, my relationship with the manager is falling apart. I don't like this. I feel like they're trying to blame me for as poorly as the team is playing. This is not all on me, and I should be playing. And that is a firestorm because people always overlook how good Mo Salah has been. I've searched for reasons for that. I don't really know what they are, but people have always overlooked how good Mo Salah has been as a player. But he is the holder of, he's got 277 goals and assists combined for Liverpool. I mean, that is an outstanding career by whatever metric you want to hold up next to it, right? He's remarkable. He's been the talisman of what has been a revival of Liverpool over the last 10 years into one of the best clubs in the world, pulled out of a doldrum and winning the Premier League, which, might I remind you, is something that was a huge deal when I started following the Premier League. Before, Liverpool hadn't won a Premier League in 30-something years. You had Jamie Carragher slipping, all this stuff that had happened. And they were kind of a cursed team in some ways, and he was the attacker that helped pull them free of that. Obviously, you had the Firmino, the Sadio Mane combination. It was the three of them. But the cast has rotated. He's stayed there and continued to produce. He had at least a goal and an assist in like 10 matches last year, which is crazy. He's one of the best Premier League players of all time. I mean, just genuinely, by any metric you want to go with, he's one of the best Premier League players of all time. And he's not that old, but he hasn't been playing that well. Look at these matches, right? Obviously, you got to cancel out the Egypt ones, but I mean, we're not getting a lot of goal contributions here. Full 90, full 90, full 90, full 90. It's not really working. He's got a goal here in this match, but they lost, and he ended up with a 6.2 rating. It's not been a good year for Mo Salah. It hasn't, particularly since it turned to October. He has not produced statistically. Of course, that is not as usually is not even half the story. Right? Liverpool hit a wall that it did not expect to hit, lost a whole bushel of games, can't seem to get good results at home, had a bit of a nightmare. The wheels fell off remarkably quickly. And that did kind of coincide with the fact that Mo Salah's statistical production was going down. And there's a couple directions that people can go with this. Obviously, the conversation, I just wanted to point that out. The conversation started with people like Thierry Henry saying, I had problems with Wenger and Guardiola. Did I ever talk about it publicly? Never. No matter what's happening internally, you protect the club, your teammates, the manager, the staff. You don't air dirty laundry publicly, especially when the club is going through bad moments. I understand the ego in Mo's frustration. He scores 38 goals and ends up on the bench. But there comes a point where you must put the team before yourself. Then people started asking, Jurgen Klopp, what was it like to manage Mo Salah? I wouldn't say he is easy to manage, but he is also not difficult to manage. You only have problems with Mo Salah if he is not playing or you take him off. And that is interesting. Because Thierry Henry, what he's talking about is this entirely separate vein, and we're going to get to the other side of that conversation in a second. It just took a little while for the other side of that conversation to come up. This is the type of person, at least according to Jurgen Klopp, that you're not going to have problems with until they get towards the end of their career. And I think it is fair to say that Mo Salah, even though I think he's got years left of being a contributor at a very high level, is not at the absolute peak of his powers. For whatever reason, maybe he's just in a slump. Maybe it's not even because he's old. He's just not playing that well. But he's obviously at a point in his career where if he has a slump, people are going to start to point at the age. They're going to start to go, maybe he's lost a step. Maybe he doesn't have it anymore. Or if you have a slump when you're 24, 25, nobody ever questions that. But now they're going to be sitting here questioning that for Mo Salah at this point. Like, oh, he's lost a step and he's in trouble and it's over. It's over. The village is burning. And it doesn't seem like, based off what Jurgen Klopp has said, that he's going to handle that very well. Because apparently the only thing that gets under Mo Salah's skin is not necessarily the wins and losses, right? Because he doesn't seem to want to blame other people for that. I'm sure he just in his mind said, I got to play better. We're not winning, whatever. The only time he has issues is if he's not playing or you take him off. Well, if he's not scoring or assisting anything, and if Arne Slot judges that he's not contributing in other phases of the match, then it's kind of the manager's job to not play him, at least for a little bit. Now, obviously, you've got this tremendously talented player that you probably should figure out a way to use, because there's no way he's lost that much of a step that he's still not the best option to put out there. But, for a game or two, trying to find something that works, I mean, you lose 4 straight games, you kind of got to shake the snow globe. See where everything lands again. Give some other guys some opportunities. And another thing about this was pretty striking to me is Mo Salah hit this pretty quick. I mean, Mo Salah basically just didn't start for 3 matches. He was on the bench for this match after, consecutive blowout losses. Then he came on, he played 45 minutes against Sunderland, and then he was on the bench for this match. That's pretty quick. I mean, that is literally a week. In 1 week, in 3 matches, Mo Salah basically went nuclear. That's a pretty quick trigger on this sort of thing. You would expect, and you see from some players, that you need like a couple of weeks of a player being iced out for them to then all of a sudden be reintroduced. But let's go back to Thierry Henry's thing. Okay, Thierry Henry saying you got to keep this in-house. I generally agree with that. The only time you should go outside the house to try and handle this is if you feel like that's going to be the best way to handle it. But I mean, the way I would handle things if I was in this situation, which I'm not, because I'm not a professional footballer or the king of Egypt, I would try to keep it in-house. He's obviously elected not to do that, but I do agree with Thierry Henry's assessment here that that's what he should be doing. But I also agree with somebody like Gary Neville, who says if it was a player that didn't have the level of talent, experience, or success of Mo Salah, I think they'd be kicked out pretty quickly. But he goes on to say, but when you're that exceptional and that talented and have the presence of a great player, you don't accept being put on the bench and not being put on. I played with players who were exactly the same and left the club as soon as that was the case. It's a delicate situation. It's a very delicate situation. The reason Mo Salah can do this, and no doubt the reason he feels like he can do this, is because he's a Liverpool legend, right? He's got gravitas. He has aura. He is a truly great player. He's the type of player you never expect to see on the bench unless it's load management and rotation. He has that. He's earned that. It wasn't given to him. He took it. Then that is why I'm assuming that even though it's only been a week, he feels confident enough in his position to be able to come out and say these things. But the most important part of this conversation, Gary Neville also said something else. Salah will not sit down and watch Gakpo play football. These players don't sit and watch players that are inferior, which one, burn to Gakpo. I mean, saying Mo Salah is better than Cody Gakpo is a fair statement, but it's not like Gakpo's a terrible player. If you have a player that reaches a certain point, you're just going to have to deal with this. And Mo Salah has decided to go this route. I don't know if Arne Slot knew this was coming, because there is the possibility that Arne Slot knew this was going to happen, but he kind of wanted it to happen to, in some way, fire up Mo Salah. Maybe he thought he was complacent, he wasn't getting the best out of Mo Salah, and now he's pissed him off. And, I mean, for better or worse, usually when you're pissed off, you play better, you try harder, right? And maybe that's what he was trying to do. But the most concerning thing in this whole conversation for me is that Mo Salah said that his relationship with the managers deteriorated a lot. Now, this is always going to be a he said situation. But it's possible that Arne Slot has not handled this well at all, because Arne Slot is now being pushed into a position where he's uncomfortable. Arne Slot is now being pushed into a position that few people handle very well, which is I've succeeded a lot and now all of a sudden I suck. That is a tough spot to be in. It is a difficult spot to deal with. Maybe he's not handling it well. He's not communicating with Mo Salah. Or if you want to metagame it, maybe that's part of his strategy to piss Mo off. Of course, on the other side of it, maybe Arne Slot's communicated this very well. Maybe he sat Mo Salah down and said, hey, I'm going to bench you for the next couple of matches. You're not giving me the effort I need. You're not playing well enough. And that's the truth. And maybe Mo Salah, just being this person, who he is, the global brand, one of the best players in the world, just didn't take it well. But it wasn't Arne Slot's fault. He communicated it super well. And we're not going to know which side this is on. But I think this whole situation boils down to Mo Salah had a card to play. Arne Slot had a card to play. He played it. Mo Salah had a card to play. He played it. My question is, what is Mo Salah's endgame? Because the interesting thing is, I think Mo Salah and Arne Slot's endgame is the same. I think they both want to fucking win games at Liverpool. And Mo Salah clearly believes the best way to do that is if he's on the field. And Arne Slot for a little bit clearly didn't. But he might again. Because, Mo Salah came in, got an assist, and they beat Brighton in their last Premier League match after he was left off the squad for the Inter match, which I'm assuming is Arne Slot, making a statement about Mo Salah being left out of the team. So I actually think this, my opinion, I'm not bothered by either of these people playing these cards. It's not like Mo Salah was lighting the world on fire. Arnie Slot did what a manager is supposed to do in that situation. Mo Salah played the I'm great, fuck you card. And now, for the moment, it seems like things are coming back together. And because at the moment, they still seem to want to push in the same direction, I think it'll be fine. I think it's just much ado about nothing. It's something to keep the talking heads in business, basically.